You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflected in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflected in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflected in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflected in. Their eyes to see the world they know outside. I can close my eyes and see all that and way beyond. When these trials of life come heavy and these obstacles get hard, feeling like I need some answers, I just go and talk to God. I just go and talk to God when I'm looking for guidance. Need more than sight, need vision, need direction when I'm blind. Then I start that conversation with that voice I hear inside me. And that conversation starts with a voice inside that sounds just like me when I talk to God. You can see God in anything, your reflection. I can find God in anything. When I talk to God, you can see God in anything. When I talk to God, find God in anything. When I talk to God, my daddy said don't ever assume, ask questions. It's ironic it was that advice that helped the song happen. It was also that advice that led me to my life's blessings. That same advice helped me make it through life's lessons. It was that advice that separates grown-ups away from children. That advice can be the difference from knowing or just believing. It was that advice that brought the gavel down on my decisions of breaking the mental chains of these man-created religions. Cause faith and belief, nonsense, the biggest scam ever. I hate to say it, I swear it's one hell of a mental illness. Why we do it with these religions? The fact that Coke is killing while all of these guys is missing. Peekaboos, guys playing games with you. I'ma just assume he ain't got no COVID miracles. Maybe he ran out after making the donkey talk. Or some stories about a guy walking on water tides. It's simply a distraction to keep you away from you and to look outside for a God when the God is inside of you. When you close your eyes at night and pray to that voice you talking to. When you ready to face the truth, you realize that that voice is you. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Welcome to When the Pastor Has Questions. I am your host. Y'all know me, but look who I got with me. I'm elated. I know some of y'all that's coming in here. I know you happy about it. My man Chris Terrell, he already expressed how happy he was to have the author of From Saved to Sane with us. We got Mr. Willie O. Cartwright with us in the house. I wish I had some sound effects so we could get a little clapping and stuff going on, but I know they're doing it in their own way. Let me go ahead and do the preliminaries, y'all. I'll go ahead and scroll it to the bottom. This is one of the ways that I continue to get my increase so that I can grab these books. And would you know, I was just sharing with, I wasn't gonna share this with y'all, but y'all know I work. Y'all know I work a 9 to 5. So I got all my questions here on my phone because this is a good book. I left my doggone book at work, so I gotta go back and get it because that's a special one. Willie autographed that book for me, so it's definitely special to me. So tonight, y'all, as we have been doing all month, talking about how religion and maybe even Christianity more specifically has affected, Black people. Now, I do know some of my viewers have a problem with that designation. Not the topic for tonight. Black, melanated, whatever you want to use. If you look like me or you got brown skin or whatever, I'm talking to you. This relates to you. So we're going to talk about some things from his book. I'm just going to have a good conversation with Mr. Cartwright here. And so without further ado, so we can maximize on the time, Mr. Cartwright, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing awesome, man. Awesome. I appreciate it. I'm honored to be here, having this discussion with you and your audience. So I'm ready. I'm ready, brother.
Well, man, I'm just so excited, as I was telling you backstage, and I have some things. I'm not gonna give away. I don't want to give away too much of the book. By the way, if y'all are looking at the description, in the description you can click the link and you can grab the book. And what I'm gonna do real quick, I'm gonna share one screen just real quickly so y'all can see that y'all can go to Amazon and y'all need to go ahead and cop this. It's a good read. Are y'all seeing that? That's the one. You want to look for that right there. You can get this book in a paperback form. It's a good, easy read, but at the same time, it is very enlightening, especially if you consider yourself a melanated person in the Americas. So we gonna hop right in it, Mr. Cartwright. I'm just gonna call out some of the pages, but then there's some things we talked about backstage we can get into. Like for instance, on page 8, this is actually on page 8 of the book, and I'm just gonna read a statement from it and see if we can get you to elaborate some, so they'll see what the book is about, but at the same time they'll understand the depth of information that you have. Oh, one more thing. This, y'all, is not like us going into the text that we normally do on our and talking about the text of the Bible. I was hoping for this week, and maybe at least for this conversation, we can talk about the effects that the doctrines have had on our you may not agree with the teachings because we got all these different denominations, right, bro? I mean, they all over the place. But one thing we can't deny is that no matter what denomination you were in it, and it has affected millions of us out here. Whether you believe that their doctrine is right or wrong, Christianity in some form or another has done some things. So on page 8, it says this. It says the church, it was talking about church would begin with Sunday school, and these lessons are always vague. You were talking about the vague lessons, and they highlighted the good parts of the Bible, but they kind of glossed over anything negative or that could be explained away or couldn't be explained away quite very, very simply. And you also stated we were also told not to question God. And I think that's a good place to start. And to give you a little bit more, there was a story that I've been telling folk. I recently took a trip to South Florida from Jacksonville. It's about a 5-hour drive. And I was with my grandmother who raised me. She's about upper 70s. And she brought me to the church, bro, got me in preaching, sent me to school and all of that. And now I'm out, so she think I'm crazy. But while we on this trip, I said, Grandma, I said, did y'all ever have any questions though about the things? And while I was driving, I could feel her eyes looking at me saying, questions? Boy, if you asked questions, your mouth would have been on that floor. But you not ask questions. And I wanted to hear you elaborate on that as well as you do, and why you feel that that is ingrained in our culture and has been detrimental to our survival.
Well, before I start, let me say hello to Texas Goddess. I gotta say hello to your sister because she be on my show coming in and wonderful comments. And I appreciate her. So what's up, Texas Goddess? Glad to see you. But what I oftentimes will say is that Christianity, all religions for that matter, but let's just be specific about Christianity because that's where I come from. That's where you come from. That's where a lot of our people are at. So Christianity has what I call built-in defense mechanisms, right? To keep us in place, to keep us where they want to keep us at. And one of those defense mechanisms is telling us that we're not allowed to ask questions, especially before the internet. I grew up before the internet. So you had to get all your information from a singular source or a particular source. You didn't have the privilege of going and research information for yourself. I mean, you could, but it would be really difficult. So all of us, for the most part, got our information from a Sunday school teacher, a pastor, an elder, a parent, or a grandparent. And it was designed that way because they understood that if you started to do your own research, that you would find things that would contradict what you had been told or taught, and B, you would have questions that they either didn't want to answer or did have the answers to. And so this was just a defense mechanism to keep you in your place, so to speak, and that place being a devout Christian that didn't ask questions. And so fast forward, 30, 40 years, and then we have the internet. And so the internet has become one of the biggest enemies of Christianity. if you want to know why uh, so many young people, when I say young, I'm talking millennials and younger, generations of millennials and younger, are starting to, at a minimum, question their faith, all the way out to flat out leaving it, is because of the internet. So now they can do their own research. They can even check you on the spot. If you an elder, minister, or pastor who's saying da 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 da, they will check you right on the spot. And when they find that there's a contradiction into what you're teaching them, then that causes them to think, well, wait a minute, what else is this pastor or this person lying to me about in religion? And so when I have conversations with people who say, well, you left the church, people who know my history, they say, well, you left the church because of church hurt or because of whatever. No, that's not the case. Here's what happens. When you start to ask questions and you either not get the answers or you find a contradictory answer by doing your own research, that causes you to peel back the onion even more. And the more, it's like a thread, the more you pull, the more things become undone. The more questions you have, the more things just don't sync up. And that's what the church is mostly afraid about. But they're in a situation now where they can no longer keep us from researching the information. What keeps us, it's funny because what keeps us being, African American population, what keeps us from asking the questions is what has been ingrained in us over generations, which is if you ask the question, you're going against God. You can't question
Mm.
God. And so even though the information is out there for all of us, a lot of us are still not seeking that information because we've been trained and indoctrinated. And if you ask the question, then you're somehow questioning God, and that is blasphemy. You don't question God. So even though we can do it, mentally we can't. There's an old adage out there that shows how in a circus when they used to have circus, they
Mhm.
would tie the elephant to something, and the elephant would try to move, and the elephant realized that it couldn't leave, right? Because it was tied to something. It was tethered to something. At some point, they would untether the elephant, but the elephant still had it in his mind that it was tethered to that pole or whatever and wouldn't try to leave. That is
Mm.
exactly how we are. We are mentally tethered to the things that were ingrained in us. And even though we got the freedom to go check and do the research, we won't, because in our brains we're still connected to the things that they ingrained in us over the generations that's keeping us in our place, so to speak.
Let me pry a little bit on that. So if that's the case, and I think that makes a whole lot of sense for some of our would be scientists and things of that nature coming out. I think that there is damage being done when we just simply give as an answer, let's say for uh the existence of the earth, and they just, oh well, God did it. Oh well, why does the sun appear to move? Oh well, God, that's the way God set it up, rather than being able to break down what's really going on in the science. Can you say anything about why that may be not only that's not only detrimental to the African American community, but I think because, like the comedian said, we love us some God. We love us some God that is real deeply ingrained in our community. So what has religion, Christianity specifically, done to stunt our progress in science and academia?
Well, I think, and I wrote about this in my book as well. I think it's a chapter on education. And so, whether we realize it or not, the majority of the world accepts the theory of evolution, Big Bang, and natural selection. Even those outside of the United States, with the exception of some Middle Eastern countries or whatever that are extremely devout, but for the most part, most of the world understands that the theory of Big Bang, natural selection, are the most plausible explanations for our existence. These things are taught in most universities, most colleges, even high school science books. And so when we go out, or when our kids go out and they attempt to compete on a world stage, on a global stage, and they're still talking about the earth being created in 6 days or 7 days, and the earth being 6 to 10,000 years old, when everybody else in the world understands how old the universe is and how old the earth is. When we talk about, you got this place in Kentucky, the ark that shows videos,
The
and
Ark
yeah, the
encounter.
ark, yeah,
Yeah.
it talks about human beings existing with dinosaurs at the same time, which is just totally ludicrous. I mean, we're talking about 65 million year difference between when we came out and when dinosaurs died out. 65 million years is the time frame, the difference. So we have to be mindful of that with our kids. We want our kids to be able to compete on that stage. Science and biology are things that we have to embrace. The science says this, and the evidence is there for this and that. There is zero empirical evidence of the creation story. There is zero empirical evidence of the creation story. So when you go out here, when our kids or even us as adults go out here and we make this claim and we say it as if it's gospel, I'll borrow one of their terms. We say it like it is gospel truth. We're really sounding very uninformed and unintelligent. And so that's just a part of it. When our education is referenced through the prism of religion, you sound extremely uneducated.
Mm.
Science and religion, and I would challenge anybody, and I know there are people out there that would say this, but I would challenge anybody that there is science and religion, the Bible, the way things are taught in the Bible, and what we actually have in science, they cannot coexist. There is no coexistence between the two. Now you can subjectively interpret something to mean something else, but in reality, what is taught in the Bible about science and creation, it is incomparable compatible it is incompatible to what we've learning and what the science says.
Absolutely. I agree. Um, when we go into morals, because I want to move to that because on page 9, you asked the question about do we really need religion for morals? And I want to tell you something that I told you I was talking about slavery on last week, and I read something in a book that was actually recommended to me by Texas Goddess, and I thought it was quite profound because religious folk will give the argument that you have no objective standard for morality outside of the whole God thing, and they say that it's the whole Bible thing. The problem I have with that is that these same people will oftentimes, maybe not all the time, admit that slavery is not only wrong, but it is immoral, and it has always been immoral, while at the same time advocating for the Bible. And I'm trying to get them to see you cannot be drawing that it has always been immoral from the Bible because it straight away regulates and condones the practice of slavery. Now, if you think that it is immoral, where are you getting that from? You're not getting that from your Bible. You can't be getting that from your Bible because it regulates it. So my general question is about, do we really need religion for morals? And maybe we can offer something in the way you mentioned evolution. I'm just trying to give people some extra here. So in evolution, I recently started looking at that myself, and I didn't know this. I learned that we have altruistic genes that actually tell us or make us moral or like nice or to do something nice for the community. I didn't even know that that was a thing. So how do you feel about the whole thing when religious people tell you you have no standard of objective morality if you're not going to be about their religion?
That's I love those discussions. So let's begin here. First of all, when you say, as someone in the comments is saying, God is the objective standard of morality, first of all, you are beginning with the presumption that God is real. something that has not been proven. So that's the first issue. You're doing what we call confirmation bias. You're beginning with something that has not been proven. But let's just get that out the way. Secondly, if you need a deity to tell you that doing something is wrong, then you already have a problem and an issue. Thirdly, let's address what you said about the gene. Here is how we as human beings, humanity, this is how we got morality. Through evolution, we discovered that there were things that we would do that would be harmful to us and harmful to the larger community. We realized that if we did not do those things, then the larger community, larger society will flourish. That's what morality came from. So basically what morality is that I'm not going to do something that's going to harm me or the larger community. If you want to know the definition of morality, generally speaking, that's what it is. And so so that's why that's why I stand on that. And so again, my first point was you're beginning with a premise of there is a God that exists. The question would be, where is your empirical evidence that that God exists? Number two, which God are we talking about? Because humanity has created 1,000+ gods for everything that we did not understand the answer to. You want to know how we got gods? Gods came about because we did not understand or have an answer for things. So we created a God for lightning, we created a God for thunder, we created a God for earthquakes, we created a God for all the things that we didn't have an answer to. And as we've scientifically proven how these things come about, those gods have fallen by the wayside. And so what you have now is what we call God of the gaps. If you don't know the answer for something, we will insert the answer must be God. Now, I'm not telling you that a God doesn't exist. What I'm telling you that if you're going to make that assertion, it is your job to prove that assertion. It is not my job as a non-believer in your God to prove that your God doesn't exist. There's a thing called you cannot disprove a negative. The trying to disprove anything is what's called it is unfalsifiable. You cannot prove something that is unfalsifiable. You can't prove that Santa Claus doesn't exist. You can't, you can't prove that a unicorn doesn't exist, right? So the same thing goes for God. So again, what we make the assumption, we start off with the premise that this God exists, and then from that point we automatically are off or we're wrong because we started with that premise, and that premise has never been proven. So that's where we are on that. And then I tell people, what God are you talking about? Because if you lived in another part of the world, you would be worshiping a different God, a God by a different name. I can guarantee you that whatever experiences that you've had that make you believe that in your God, someone else in a different part of the world has had that exact same experience, and they have attributed that experience to their God or to no God at all. So that's where we are on that.
And by the way, if you see something, I'm purposely not paying too much attention to the chat because I want to be respectful to you. But if you see something, Mr. Cartwright, in that chat that you want to address, just stop me and go forward. That person you see, that's my boy Quentin. He is a member. He's a member of the Churches of Christ and all that. But what you said about the other parts of the earth, because on page 11 of the book, you talk about the indoctrination. Now, I heard this word when I was going to school at Southwestern Christian College in Terrell, Texas, and I also heard it in the churches. And coming out of the street, I didn't necessarily think that word was a bad thing. They was like, you got to indoctrinate the people with the word of Christ and everything. But I think that this is a problem with children generationally. And when you look at slavery, for instance, let's look at that. If they take these kids and tell them that there's a God in the sky, he looks like them, the slave master. He has that image. You talk about Cesar Borgia in your book. He looks like them, and they grow up not knowing or having access to any other information. what do you think that that's going to do to them? So can you elaborate from your perspective on what it was to indoctrinate and how that's being done with young black kids here in this country, and how that has caused the problem coming up into the present day?
Well, let's go back to the very beginning. We as a people were indoctrinated with Jesus, white Jesus. And so if you understand our history, what we were told, what our ancestors were told was that, listen, here is your God, right? And they presented the images, the pictures of what God looks like. There's a great brother I done named Jeremiah Camara, who I reference in the book. He has a lot of documentaries he do about the church and everything. And one of the things he said to me when we had a meeting was, he said, God is white because he's white in Walmart. So I had to take a step back. I said, what? He's what? Then I thought about it. He said, God is white and Jesus is white because he's in Walmart, because he's white in Walmart. And what he meant by that was Walmart is the biggest retailer in the world. And all of their images, if you Google Jesus, Google God, or go into the store, all of the images are of a white God of Jesus. And this was done to our ancestors years ago, because what they wanted to create in us was a reverence to whiteness. And so they understood that if we believed that our Savior was white, then that would make it more difficult for us to harm them, because we view them one and the same. We see their whiteness and we see our Savior's whiteness. We're the only people on the face of the earth that worships a God that does not look like them. We're the only people on the face of the earth that does not worship a God that looks like them. So there's a reason for that. So now, fast forward, you're indoctrinating your kids. The reason why churches wants, and they'll tell you, if you go to the Catholic Church, they would always say, give us your kids between certain ages, because they
The
understand.
Jesuit,
Yep.
between 1 and 7 years.
So they
Yep, you got 'em.
understand that if they got that information in them, it makes it really difficult to leave. Those of us like me, I was in the church for 40 years. Leaving the church was extremely difficult. Even when I denounced religion and Christianity, there were still things in my mind that said, oh, this is going on. It must be God punishing you, or this is going on because God is unhappy with you. Because those are the things that I was indoctrinated to believe over the years. And so church understands that. And so they understand the power of that. And so when your kids are young and they're indoctrinated into this religion, first of all, it makes them more docile. There's a feeling of helplessness that I can't do this. There's a feeling of, we understand that a lot of times in our church, we're told that we are wretched. We are born into sin. What does that do to your psyche of a black person who, on top of that, has to deal with all the things that we have to deal with in this society, just being black? So now they tell you this, and then they tell you you're sick, you're wretched, you're sinful. But the answer, the cure is salvation from this image of this white-looking God or white-looking Jesus. So now, and then add this to it, most black kids, every person that they see that is of an authority figure, for the most part, is white. A lot of the teachers are white. Police officers they see is white. Up until Barack Obama, the president was white. The manager is white. The business owner is white. All of that. And so you add all that together, and you create within us a conscious and subconscious reverence for white. It is the reason why you have black people who would gladly work for someone white, but if you put a black person in charge of them, they got issues. The black person could be just as qualified or even more qualified than the white person, and we don't even know this. I say this all the time. We are sick as a people and don't even know it, because it's so much ingrained in us to be the way that we are, and a lot of it, the foundation of it, is religion, is what we were taught and trained through religion. So now we've been trained, we've been taught to worship and be reverence to this whiteness, right? We're taught that we're sinful. We're taught that we're wretched. We're taught that we're pitiful. Here's what I say, and I say this, and I make this analogy all the time. You work hard. You go to the car dealership. You get a basic. Let's say you buy a brand new Camry. Now, black people will buy a brand new Camry and they'll put blessed on the front or blessed on the back. My question is, Bruh, you work hard every day. The least you can have is a car. You're not blessed because you got a car. And here's the reality of it. That car dealership, they needed you to buy that car more than you needed to buy that car. Because there's a million dealerships, but they only get X amount of customers that walk through that door that's prepared to buy. So they need you more than you need that. There is, you got a brand new Camry. There's a 16-year-old kid at the local high school that's driving a BMW, and he ain't got blessed on the front. If you work every single day, you're supposed to have something, But again, it's because we see everything through the prism of our devoutness to Christianity and to religion. To everything takes that shape. Everything comes through that, and we have to be mindful of that because that creates in us low self-esteem.
I'm gonna segue a little bit from the questions. Now I did think about this on the way to work this AM, because you bring up the whole thing. Some of us were taught original sin. I fortunately wasn't taught that, but what I was taught is that your righteousness is as filthy rags. That's a text from Isaiah. And then I learned what filthy rags were for those that have sensitive ears. It has to do with a woman being on her menstrual cycle. And what she throws away after that. So what I was thinking about was, what have we done so bad? Just this is for melanated people, but just in general, what have we done so bad to warrant hell forever? And what I was thinking on my way to work this morning about that, I was like, so if I have premarital sex, does that warrant hell burning for an eternity? Because the majority of people in the world are not murderers. I could make a case, okay, you murdered somebody, you're gonna lose your life now. Maybe I could make that case, but I'm just saying, when it comes to this God of the Bible and how melanated people have been just downtrodden on every end, now you're teaching us original sin and that we're no good, and this God that doesn't even look like us, we got to look to him for our help. And then you're again going back to that. I mean, bruh, I'm just saying, even if you did sell a bag of weed or whatever it was, should you burn forever for that? Why you need this Jesus over here to save you from eternal fire when Jeffrey Dahmer gets to go to heaven because he converted to the Church of Christ before they took him out? I just want to get your thoughts on that. You see where I'm at?
Oh no, absolutely. And so here's what I always use this when I have these discussions with people. And usually somebody with kids, because most people have kids. And here's what I ask them. I say, let's say you had the power to condemn your kids to hell forever, to an eternity. Is there anything that your kids can do that would make you condemn them to hell? Right? I've yet to find a sane parent that would say, yes, there is something. Not the least would be, I said, well, what if your kids say, you know what, from now on, I'm telling people that you're not my mother and that I don't know you and that, whatever. And the parent would say, no, still wouldn't happen. And so here's a God who supposedly loves you more than you love yourself. Supposedly, this God loves you more than you love your kids or your kids love you. But yet, you as a human being is more moral than this God that you serve, because there is nothing that your child can do that will make you condemn them to hell for an eternity. But your Father, your God, this God that you worship, if you say, well, I don't know God, I don't know Jesus, he's not my savior, that's enough to get you condemned to hell forever. Now, understand this. People like to cherry pick. God of the Bible is a heinous character, a heinous figure. There's research out that shows you that the God of the Bible is responsible for 2 million plus killings, where the devil who he created, but the devil is only responsible for, I think it's about 10.
About 10, yeah.
About 10. So again, ask yourself these questions. why did God create sin? Why did God even create the devil? And so all this stuff where people say, well, no, he did. That's semantics. If your God is all powerful, all knowing, and created everything that he created, and even in the Bible, he says that he created evil. And we understand that he created everything, which means he created the devil, because the devil started off as an angel.
Exactly.
So we understand that, right? So why not? So we make the analogy. If you guys are familiar with cartoons back in the day, the road runner and the coyote.
Coyote.
The reason why the coyote never caught the road runner, because that would be an end to the show. The reason why God never killed the devil, because it would be an end to the show. So think about that in the future for people.
And you can't say he ain't got the power, because that would be to admit that your God is not all powerful if he can't eradicate the devil. So going back to the slavery kind of context, I have here, and I was looking at some things on page 24 of your work, and you made this statement, if I've copied it correctly, that they felt Africans were inferior and did not have souls, but eventually they realized forcibly converting to Christianity would help to make them more manageable and docile. So I want you to elaborate on that, but I'm thinking also something else here as it relates to how they viewed Africans as 3/5 of a man. You didn't really have that soul, and I'm interested to if you can elaborate more on that, along with this whole making us more manageable through Christianity.
Okay. Yeah. Before I hit that, let me just because I'm reading the comments, and Quinn Johnson. At this point, the only thing that is subjective is your God. So until you can present empirical archaeological evidence that the God exists, that your God exists, then the thing that is really subjective is your God. So let me get to your question, brother. First of all, the 3/5 compromise, when we review this 3/5 of a person, remember that's a legal thing. That's in the way we were counted as a people for the purpose of voting, because at that point in the South, we being African American, we being enslaved people, outnumbered white people. And so from it was sort of a compromise between the North and the South. That's how we got 3/5 of a person. But the whole thing about souls was this. And then there are books out. There's a book called Heathen that talks about Christianity and racism and the process of othering people who actually were non-Christians. However, it was really done under disguise of racism. So what happened is that as they brought us over here, and we can get into this whole discussion, and I've done podcasts on what was our exposure to Christianity prior to coming over here to the States. That's really irrelevant to what it is, but most of us became exposed to Christianity once our ancestors got here, and after, I think it's 1808, they legalized the importation of slavery, and so slaves were homegrown. So we were born here, so we got Christianity here. But what happened? Christians, white Christians, figured that if we understood the Bible and they gave us the Bible, and we read the Bible, then that would somehow empower us. And so they first thought, well, let's not do that. And then they realized that they could take things out, and they did. They created what's called a slave Bible. There's a copy in Washington, D.C. and in museums. You can get the slave Bible. They took out all the things that would empower us, and they left in the things that made us more docile, more easily to control, and more manageable. Nate Turner used the Bible, not the slave Bible, but the Bible as his influence to try to overthrow, doing what he did. He wasn't the only one. There was a couple other people, several other people, but that Turner is one of the more familiar ones, recognizable ones. But also in the othering, what they did was they said, well, okay, if we let slaves become Christians, then they're going to feel like that they're equal to us. But we can't let them believe that. So what they did was say, okay, we don't believe that enslaved Africans have souls. So therefore they can't be saved per se like we can be saved. Now,
Mm.
what's harmful about that, brother, is that um, that whole way of thinking that we're somehow subhuman and not human has affected us throughout history. The reason why one of the reasons why they and I mean, and I said the oppressors, white people, have done these medical studies on us, like this the Tuskegee syphilis
Yeah.
experiment. There's a doctor who is the so-called father of gynecology, and they did very, very heinous things to black women.
Mm.
Is because of this us feeling that we are subhuman. So they feel like that we don't experience pain the way they do. Even today, there are studies in medical school that would tell you that at least 50% of medical students believe that black people feel no pain compared to what white people feel. This is remnants of
Wow.
going back to slavery where they feel like we didn't have a soul. Because what this is doing is basically dehumanizing us. They really believe that we are subhuman. They really feel like that we are very near or next to animals. And so if you understand anything about animals, they inflict all kind of pain. And animals can take more pain, generally speaking, than humans, because that's where it is. But so all of this is important because there's a connected dot thing here where we go from uh, enslavement to where we are now to how white people feel about us collectively, and this is something that's been passed down over and over and over and over
Mm.
about it.
Right. I want to go back to Nathaniel Turner. I actually had that as a note here from the book. And there are some I've heard the argument that it's not the Bible's fault, it's people's interpretation. And if you use it, it liberates us. I wrote it like this earlier. Like some would say if Nat found a reason for liberation of melanated people in the Bible, religion, I'm gonna say, then is it not the word of God, the Bible, the truth that will set one free physically and spiritually? What would you say to that question? They say, well, Nat used it. Why is it bad now all of a sudden?
How many people know what happened to Nat?
Yeah. I heard he got ratted out and they strung him up, bro.
And they
They
skinned
strung
him.
him up.
They skinned him. They
Ooh.
cut up. They cut him in parts,
Mm-hmm.
and all of that. So where was God in that? And this is my answer to people who ask that question. Where was God the last 400 years? Where was God when our people were being taken from Africa and brought here to the States? Where was God when between 15 and 20 million of our people died through the slave trade, all the way through segregation and John Crow? So we can't act like we kind of view God the way we view baseball, right? Baseball is selective. If you go 3 for 10 in baseball for your career and you have a long enough career, you are a Hall of Famer. But that's 30%. Any other category, that's failure. So what we tend to do as Christians who are trying to defend this God is that we pick out, well, what about this, this, and this? But you're missing the 70 or 80% of the time when God didn't show up or hasn't shown up. So that's my answer to somebody who has that particular question.
Mhm. And I put this because I'm gonna put my 2 cent in with it. When I thought about it, I was thinking, wouldn't that also be to endorse violence? Because when Nat read the book and he felt like we should be free, he started taking their heads off. I'm just saying, I don't know who that might do anything for. I'm just saying I don't think you can make the claim that the book is okay in that sense because of someone's interpretation. You could probably interpret it any way you want. I got a friend on here right now. He's good guy. Carl, my audience knows Carl, but he has a totally different interpretation of that whole book. So I'm gonna leave that right there. Let's get into Botham Gene.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Botham was a member of the Churches of Christ. Some of y'all might remember this gentleman. He was a song leader in the Churches of Christ. I think he went to Dallas West Church of Christ. That's there in Dallas, Texas. This was the young man who stayed in an apartment building. And there was a white female police officer who apparently had an apartment near his. She opened the door to his apartment.
Mm-hmm.
His apartment. She sees him in there. She kills him. He's gone. But what happens in the trial of her being convicted of murder and sentenced to 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
I knew about the brother expressing, you know how they give an opportunity for the family to express and get some things off their chest concerning what has happened to their loved one. The brother said, I forgive you and all of that. But it's what you wrote in your book that I didn't see. I did see the brother's confession. That was enough for me. I was so upset with that. But you said, and you pointed out in your book, that not only the judge consoled the defendant, and then the bailiff, of all people, you never see the bailiff doing this. The bailiff is just there, take you on to jail, man.
Mm-hmm.
But the bailiff stroking her hair, and when I read this in the book, bro, I actually had to take a break. I was that
Mm-hmm.
upset. I
Mm-hmm.
took a break, and so can you expound on why are we so forgiving, and is that healthy? Because some would see that that's a good thing. You know, you're forgiving, you're loving, you're displaying the attitude of Christ, right?
It depends on how you look at it. But let me let me get to that. Brother Carl, I would love to hear your answers, brother. Because you saying that because I don't know who God is. I got answers for you, brother Willie. You asked where was God because you don't know who God is. I would love to hear your answer. Brother Eli, so to answer your question, so in the Botham Gene situation, the story, here's the first thing. Forgiving your enemies is unnatural. Forgiving someone who's trying to annihilate you, to literally kill you, is unnatural. You don't see that anywhere else in the animal kingdom. You don't see that anywhere else. You don't even see that from white people toward us. So, and the reason why, because we were taught by the oppressors to forgive and turn the other cheek because they did not want us turning on them. The reason why you have issues that you have today with evangelical white people and everything they're trying to do block CRT is because they are afraid that if we get in power, we're going to do to them what they've done to us, because they understand that if us turning the other cheek is not natural. And they have us in an unnatural position because of what we've been indoctrinated to do and to believe, right? If you look in the Bible, since y'all want to be, Bible scholars, look at how many times God killed his enemies or the enemies of his people. Is that forgiving? Right? So what we see in the Botham case, we see a situation of what I call subconscious reverence for white. If you remember, the bailiff walked around and stroked the blonde hair of the person who had been just convicted and was in the process of being sentenced for killing innocent black man. The judge, another black woman, felt so much empathy and sympathy for this white woman that she was willing to give her Bible to keep. Right, that is sickening from the standpoint of self-preservation. I tell people all the time. Here's the thing: every other group of people on this planet lives by self-preservation, except us. We live by what we believe is right according to our interpretation of biblical scripture, i.e., ask yourself why we're still at the bottom. Everyone else understands that it is about self-preservation first. We have this dependency on, well, God is going to make it all right. Jesus is going to make it all right. That's not the case. Other people go out and they fix and deal with these situations. When you look at my book, the reason why I wrote the book is because I wanted to address issues within the church that has been detrimental to us as a community. And one of those things that I've identified is the fact that this religion, Christianity, the way we view it, the way we interpret it, the way we live it, has taken a lot out of us from the standpoint of our courage, our accountability, our responsibility, and our desire to fix our own issues. You ask a black person what's going on in the community, well, you know what, it's going to take God to fix it, it's going to take Jesus to fix it. I can take you across the street, I can take you across on the other side of town, those same issues with white people, they get out and they fix their problems. I'm not telling you what I heard, I'm telling you what I've lived. I spent about 20 years in the public school systems mentoring. And I've been a mentor in private white schools, and I've been a mentor in black schools in the hood. And what I've noticed more so than anything else, when there's a problem in white schools, white people get out and fix it. With us, we're like, well, it's gonna be all right, nothing we can do, or just let God fix it, or Jesus is gonna fix it. Jesus and God has not fixed anything for us in 400 years. If you look at every category, every category that is bad, we're at the top. And every category that is good, we're at the bottom as a collective people. He hasn't fixed anything in 400 years.
That's okay. So, and I meant to mention this to you backstage. I have a few seconds of a clip where David Banner was being interviewed, and he talks about something real quick called the Jesus complex. It's about 40 seconds. You mind? Can we bring that? I want to get your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to get your thoughts on what he's gonna say here, because I think it's relevant to what we are saying in this very moment. And he was talking about him being a leader and people wanting him to be a leader. And he offers some thoughts as to that. Mm-hmm.
While you set that up, here's what's funny. So I'm looking at the comments. Carr tells me God never killed anyone. Quentin says a perfectly just God is justified in dealing with his enemies. So what is it? Did he not kill anyone? Because we know, just if you just look at the story of Egypt and Pharaoh, he killed every firstborn. If you look at the story of Noah, he killed everyone except one family of 8 people, drowned everyone, including babies. So did he not kill anyone, or is because he's a just God, he's justified in killing his enemies? So you can say dealing, but you really mean killing his enemies. So which one is it, right? Which one is it?
Yeah, Carl,
Go ahead.
and he may have a wild perspective. Let me I'm gonna put this on, and y'all listen to the few seconds of this because I thought it was interesting and it's relevant for what Willie is sharing with us right now. Let's hit this video.
We can do Emmett Till, we could do Mike Brown, we could do Malcolm, we could do Martin. So I always tell people that black folks have something that I call the Jesus complex. See, the reason why people want a Jesus, to me, I always tell people, I scare black people. I say, Jesus is never coming back. Black people go, oh, and I tell them, I say, but I think the story of Jesus was to show you that you can be God on earth. But the problem is people don't want to put in the work that Jesus put in. People don't want to fast for 40 days and 40 nights. If your ass fasts for 40 days and 40 nights, you're going to hear some voice. It might just be, I'm hungry. But you're going to hear a voice, and your ass might walk on water. Mm-hmm. See, the problem is they want Jesus because they don't want to do the work.
Let's go ahead and talk about
right there, right freaking there. He said they want Jesus because they don't want to do the work. And I was hoping we could let that marinate for a second, and whether or not in your experience, have you seen that as truth, what David is saying there?
Yeah, but here's the thing. We see it every day. When someone says prayers and thoughts, I'm going to pray for you. That means I'm not doing anything for you. And so they feel good about themselves because they're saying, well, I'm going to pray to God and God fix it. So this is something that we see and hear about every day. Here's the thing. So the Bible is largely mythology, but there are lessons that we can learn from the Bible if it's applied right. there is, and let me get to the mythology part of it. There is zero archaeological, empirical evidence of almost every major event and major character in the Bible, with the exception of maybe David. If you don't believe me, do your research. There is zero evidence of the Great Flood story. As a matter of fact, Israeli historians have exhaustively searched for any remnants of the Exodus story. And scientists and historians would tell you that there is zero, absolutely zero archaeological evidence of the Exodus story ever happening. But I let Christians go on whenever we had these discussions to make a point. So back to the point I was making. There are things that we can glean from the Bible, stories that we can do that would help us in our everyday activity. But like David Banner says, it's easier to say, I'm gonna let God fix it or let Jesus fix it, as opposed to us actually doing the work. And now, granted, some of that is the history that we've had. We've tried stuff, we've done stuff, and because of racism or whatever else, we've had a bad experience, or the outcomes have been differently. But it is a lot easier for us to say, let God fix it, let Jesus fix it. I'm going to pray for you, than for us to do the work. I talk about that in the book. I talk about how that has robbed us of our accountability, especially in our communities. We talk about, why aren't our communities fixed? Well, because when we go to church and we pay the tithes and we say, well, God will fix it, or maybe the church will do something, but the church is not doing anything. One of my arguments is that instead of paying tithes to the church, maybe we take that money and apply it and put that money back into the community, grocery stores, health centers, different things that would actually really help the community, as opposed to taking our money to the church and watching the church give that money to banks that refuse to loan money to us in the neighborhood, in the communities, although we are funding the church, who in return gives money to the bank, give that same money to the bank. So it's one of the things I also talk about in the book.
Yeah, so the finance thing. I remember when we were talking earlier about it. Can you give us your perspective on how you feel the church has had a negative impact on Black people in this country? And I'm leaving that general because I want you to have free reign about that one. I think you did a really good job in a book of breaking that down. But if you could give us some glimpses and pieces of that, please.
So we've already addressed the issue of, from an intellectual standpoint, education. And I just briefly touched on the money issue, but one of the things that the churches do is that the church expects us to give our resources for free, and just not financial resources. Most churches mismanage our finances. They don't do what they say they're going to do. And it's, as opposed to giving that money. See, the Sunday morning in the church has the highest concentration of African American money than any other entity on this planet. And so again, if you understand finances and money, and I have a degree in finance, that's one of the degrees I have, that money is taken to banks. Banks invest the vast majority of that money. And when we go in, we being members of the community, go into a bank and ask for a loan, we don't get that money. As opposed, I will posit that we take that money that we're giving to the church, set it up some kind of way where we can, make loans to community entrepreneurs who want to create entities in the community that's going to help the community, like grocery stores, like learning centers, like recreation centers for our kids, or whatever it is that's going to help the community. Those of you out there, you notice in our communities, we have a church on every corner, but the community is still impoverished, severely impoverished. So that is one of the ways that the church has been detrimental to us. A second way is that the church understands that it needs women and kids to continue to grow. Because most men, unless you're a deacon or part of the clergy, you're not going to church. And here's the reason why. Because men understand, and believe that a lot of pastors are part of the scam. right? And so the church speaks to our women in a certain way, right? That woman comes home to her significant other, that man, and said, Pastor said A, B, C, and D. I can tell you as a grown man, I don't want no other man telling my woman how we gonna run our household. So again, that church also tells that woman, you don't need a man. Jesus is your provider. Jesus is the father of your kids. You don't need it. And so our sisters carry that attitude, and their expectations of their man becomes unrealistic. And so what they see in that pastor is the perfect man, but everybody can't have that pastor. So they're looking for what they think that pastor is in every other guy, and they're missing the boat. I had a young lady in a church, because the last church that I attended, I wasn't happy with the church, but I loved their outreach. So my wife and I, we would continue to go and work with their outreach because they did stuff in the community that was outstanding. But I remember there was a young lady who had graduated from college, and she was a dentist. And she said to me, she said, I'm trying to I might have to go somewhere else and find a man, because it's hard to find a man in Atlanta. I said, what are you looking for in a man? She said, well, I want a godly man. I said, mistake number one. I said, you know how many women have looked for godly men and have been hurt by a so-called godly man? I said, what you need to look for is a man that's going to treat you well, regardless of his belief or disbelief. Right? All our sisters are looking for a godly man. Our Black women are the most unmarried and most divorced female demographic on the face of this earth. But yet, the number one trait that they're looking for in a mate is a godly man. Something ain't adding up. Right. So we talk about the finances, we talk about relationships, we talk about from an educational standpoint. The churches have robbed us of so much stuff. Now, let me make this, and I said this early in the book. I make it clear that the church has done some good things for our community. We understand the civil rights history. A lot of our leaders have come out of the church. Not all of our leaders, but a lot of our leaders have come out of the church. The church was a place that we could go and meet. We've learned a lot from the church. The church provides us as a social outlet for a lot of people. But I had a conversation with this gentleman from Vietnam, and he gave me this story. He said, him and some people were in a canoe, and they went across this rough river in the canoe. And when they got to the end of the river, they got out and they started carrying the canoe while they walked on land. And he said at some point they realized that they no longer needed the canoe. The canoe has served its purpose. So why were they still carrying the canoe? That's what we are with the church. The church, for the most part, things that are substantive. I'm not talking about the social element, because the church still serves a social element, right? But the church and Christianity in particular, and I would even go as far as to say, even this belief in God from a collective standpoint, not an individual, and I'll get to that in a minute, but from a collective standpoint, God and this belief in Jesus and God has served its purpose. There is no need for us as a collective people to continue to carry that from the collective. Now, I will admit that for a lot of us, our belief in this God and this Jesus gets us through certain things, certain predicaments, certain situations. But that is also a placebo, because let's say someone close to you passes away. And you said, I'm not going to get through this, but I got my God and my faith and my belief, and I'm going to get through this. What if you don't have this God and your faith, and what's going to happen? The results are pretty much going to be the same. Short of you committing suicide, the results are going to be the same. And I got information. I got some news for you. There have been plenty of believers who have done just that, committed suicide because they couldn't get through a situation, even though they had the so-called faith and belief in God. So it's a placebo that we become addicted to as a people. But I promise you that if you didn't have that God or that belief system or whatever, you'll find another way to cope. You'll find a different way to cope. You'll find a different way to cope.
Now, I'm gonna be extremely transparent for a second here, because I think other people have been, you have to, life happens, right? And things get hard. And for me, when I did get to that point, and I'm a little embarrassed to say so, but I know people who won't talk about it and have been there. When I have gotten to that point, even when I was in the church, bro, it wasn't a Jesus or God even that made me say, no, Taylor, that's not the answer. What made me say that was my kids. I was looking at my kids
Found
like,
something else to get you through.
yeah, that
Yep.
was what it was for me. And
Right.
I was like, if for nothing else, I gotta remain here and build something for them. And I didn't want them to have to face the shame of having to answer
Mm-hmm.
how their father, passed. And I
Mm-hmm.
just it was my kids, bro.
Yep.
But I wanted to bring this out.
Let me
And
give you. Let me before you
yeah,
get
go
that. Let
ahead.
me give. Let me give. I'm gonna give one last thing, and I think this may eventually become the most important thing. And this is from a personal experience. This is why I have to tell the story. Um, we've named about 4 or 5 things that within our community, I believe that the church has really hurt us with. But here's another one: mental health. Right.
Mm,
So I remember growing up where if someone we called them crazy, or we said that they were possessed by the devil and that God would fix it. I have 2 stories. I have a cousin who is probably 40 years old now, who her aunt had a stroke while she was pregnant with her.
mhm,
And as opposed to instead of getting her the help that they should have gotten her when she was really, really young, um, she has spent the last 40 years of her life basically as a vegetable, like not being able
mm,
to move, do anything for herself, and they put her in the back room because so many in our community was taught that that was the work of God, or that was the devil, or that was some kind of possession, and we didn't believe in getting real mental health. It was all about praying away. This is happening
mm,
so much in our community. Second story. Years when my wife and I first denounced Christianity in 2015, and my wife don't mind me telling the story because she used the story to help other people. She went through a mental episode in about 2017, I think, right before my mom passed. Um, and so it actually was right after my mom passed. And so we had left the church, but unbeknown to us, my sister, who is still a devout Christian, and her mother, who is extremely devout, had gotten together and was doing these prayers and praying and wishing and hoping that we come back to church. And one person who I respect more than anybody else on this planet happens to be a minister. He was my mentor, but he's my personal mentor about life and manhood and all of that. But he's a minister, a great, probably one of the best people that I know on the face of this earth. He said to me, he said, Willie, he said, the reason why this stuff is happening is because you and your wife are not, you've left the covering of
I
Jesus.
remember you
Right.
talking
Yeah,
about
yeah.
that in the book.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I said, okay. So I said, all right, whatever. So we decided to try to go back to the church, and we went to several different churches, and they prayed for her, laid hands on her. They did this. This went on for months and months and months. We finally go to his church. He do the exact same thing. And then he pulled me to the side. He said, well, this is going on because God wants you to speak for him. Now,
Mm,
I cannot tell you how angry I was because this is what I said. I said, first of all, this God is supposed to be all knowing and all powerful. If he doesn't know that this is the way to push me further away, because there is nobody that I love more than my wife. And to see my wife struggle, but to have someone tell me that your wife is struggling because you're not doing something that God wants you to do, and it's supposed to be
mm,
God's way of bringing you back, I was angry. I was mad as hell. I cannot tell you how angry I was. So we did this for months and months and months. My wife never got any better. So we said, you know what? Let's go out and get secular, professional help. My wife went,
yes.
she saw a specialist, she got the help she needed, she got the medication, she got the treatment, and she's been fine since. And so we use this story to help other people that are in the church and going through mental issues, whether it be anxiety, whether it be whatever it is. And my wife is a former nurse. Whatever it is that you're going through, we need to stop telling our people in the church that just pray it away or this is demon possession or whatever it is. And we need to let our people go out here and get some real professional mental help because far too many of us are really sick. And the church is not going to do anything about it. It has nothing to do with God, the devil, or praying it away. Prayer has not helped whatsoever. And so that's another area within our community that the church, our belief system, the way we interpret it, the way we've been taught, has hurt us as a people. So many, and I live in Atlanta, in the city of Atlanta. You know how many mentally ill people, Black people of color, I see every single day. And I'm willing to bet everything that I got that the vast majority of those people started off in church and never got the professional help. And someone said, well, let's just pray it away, or they possessed by demons, or whatever it was that they said.
And yeah, and I know they got it up there. I used to live in College Park for a little
Oh,
while,
yeah.
and
Yeah. So
it's
you was in it.
bad.
You was
Yeah,
in it.
it's bad here in Jacksonville. Matter of fact, I had when I was preaching at one of the main churches in downtown Jacksonville that I was a pastor of or minister of in the Churches of Christ, and we had a gentleman who used to sing there, and he was mentally ill, and I remember thinking about how people would come. He would come around the church, and they knew him because he used to be a member there, and they would try to pray for things. But then one day, his daughter was also a member at the church, and she sat with me in my office, and she was like, "Brother Taylor, I understand," because I went ahead and called, some resources, some people to get a hold of him so he could get some help. But I felt some type of way being in the Christian environment because they had to come and take her father away. And I sat with her in the office and I said, listen, I had to do what I had to do as the minister, and how he was coming around and the different things. I'm not going to go into detail, but the different things he would do and say when he would come around, but it was because he wasn't, where he needed to be. And she made me feel so comfortable, letting me know that it was okay. That's what her father needed. And every other time he came around, all people did was say, oh, well, we're going to pray for him and keep on. She was glad that her father was actually somebody actually did something, some action happened. So I just wanted to put that story out there. And I wanted to go into this real quick. I wanted to say, do you think when it comes to melanated Black people here in America that maybe we lean on the religion thing because the problem is so big? When you look at the finances, we're not the ones holding the big dollars. We can't give, the next man a job, and the white man has a job. And so we got to depend on a power outside of ourselves to help us out. We need God to help us because, I mean, when you look at it, they got everything. They got all the resources. What do you say to that type of mindset?
I totally agree. I totally agree. It's when you do the work that I'm doing, you go through the stages, and you go through the stages, and then you get to the point where you realize that some people are getting something out of this, regardless of what my personal beliefs are or not, right? You also realize that there's a history to this and the reason why we are where we are. And so going again, we talked about slavery, going all the way back to slavery. Um, and it also touches on my last point, but going all the way back to slavery, Christianity and this God, this Jesus, provided us the only thing we had, which was hope. And so because the situation was so dire back then, all we had was hope. And that was the purpose of it. At least that's what we got out of it. That's what our ancestors got out of it. So, but fast forward 400 years, and although we're not where we want to be, we're certainly not where we were 400 years ago. And so now the same tool that provided us hope is also the same tool that is holding us back to a certain point. So again, my analogy with the story of the canoe, Christianity and our belief systems were useful 400 years ago. Now they're more of a hindrance right now because we need to step forward. We need to do the things that we need to do, and we need to stop depending on what we've traditionally depended on because we can do some things differently that we couldn't do 400 years ago.
So that's deep. When we were talking earlier and I was giving you the story, I'm going into how certain Caucasian people seem to feel a little less, I'm gonna use the word threatened, or maybe they feel more comfortable when they find out that this black man or this black woman that's standing in front of me is a Christian. And I tied in the military with that because I was sharing with you my experience of talking with some folk that it seemed like the guard comes down, especially once they know you're a Christian. This particular person, once he knew I was a minister, I mean, I felt like he just let his guard down. He felt more comfortable. He was talking to me about all his conservative problems here in America, really from a Republican perspective. Not that I have a problem with that either, because I'm not overly political. But why do you think we have gotten that experience here in this country? And what has been your experience with revealing when you were a Christian to Caucasians in this country? Did you feel that at all, that they felt a little bit more safer with you or could talk to you because you were a Christian?
Yeah, oh, absolutely, and I think that we have to be careful as to the reasoning behind that. And so here's the thing. So I tell people all the time, and I'm from Alabama, so we have a history of race relations in my home state. And so I tease my friends. I live in Georgia now, but I tease my friends who are Alabama fans. I say the only time that white people, you guys, get along is if you're talking about pets, kids, or sports. And so, and now the fourth category would be church. And so we feel that, yeah, they are comfortable with us because we have a shared experience when it comes to the church. That is one part of it. Absolutely. They feel like we have the shared experience, but they also understand what uh, Christianity does to us as a people. It puts us in a position of being extremely docile, extremely non-threatening, and they love that. So white people would take the same scriptures or the same Bible, um, and what they get out of it is manifest destiny. What they get
Mm,
out of it is supremacy, divinely orchestrated, divinely inspired supremacy. They understand what we get out of it is being docile, being passive, being subservient, and developing and having a reverence for whiteness, right? It's two different things coming from the same Bible. And if you don't believe me, understand, study your history. If you don't understand, if you don't know what manifest destiny is, look it up, understand what it is. Understand why the Ku Klux Klan was created. Understand that it was a Christian organization, and that they truly, truly believe that the things that they have done are divinely inspired and divinely orchestrated. The genocide of Native Americans was something that had to be done because they believe in something that's called manifest destiny. And so they take not only do they take the scriptures, the curse of Ham, which again people are completely wrong. There was no freaking curse of Ham, if you understand the story, if you ever read it right. But they are the ones who initially started that curse of Ham. Black people are cursed. Black people, without thinking and understanding it, fed right into it. Right. So that became one of the reasons why they were able to dehumanize us, because they led us to believe that we were cursed by God, that our skin was a curse. If you understand anything about the Mormon faith, right?
mhm.
They have stories up until the mid 70s and the mid 80s where they literally taught their people that blackness was a curse, was a curse. It's only
Mhm.
been the last 40 years that they've changed that teaching. And so many of the so-called Christians did the exact same thing.
They were still teaching that, bro, when I was in middle school. Because I tell a story when I was born in '82, and when I was in actually elementary school, my mother was approached by some Mormons, and I remember going to the little gathering, and I had a lot of fun. I was enjoying it, as a kid. It was like playing with the other kids and stuff. It was all good. And then all of a sudden we stopped going. And I said to my mom, I said, we not going to, such and such, and why we not going? And I wasn't even in fourth grade, I don't think. And she said, oh, we not dealing with them people. Them people think black people are cursed. We ain't going back there. I remember her saying that. And it didn't dawn on me until years later what she was talking about with the whole curse of Ham and everything of that nature. So when you talk about supremacy, I wanted to ask you this real quick. What are we seeing with the Hebrew Israelites? Because now they say is them, and they seem to be getting all pumped up, and I think they're going in the other direction. White people are supposed to be they slaves and all this kind of stuff, and Jacob I love and Esau I hate it type of doctrine. And let me get your take on that, and then we're gonna prepare to look into this chat. And I want to encourage y'all, if you check the description, y'all need to go and get this book. I promise you it will be good for you. It will give you some insight as to what Christian religion has done to our folk. But yeah, back, Mr. Cartwright, tell us how your thoughts and your understandings of this Hebrew Israelite and supremacy thing that they have going on.
Okay. Before I get to that, let me do this. And there are questions that come up on the chat that I just cannot ignore.
You got it.
And I don't. Brother Eli, he introduced me, but I always try to just come as who I am without the credentials, right? So let me say this to Quinn. Quinn, you said the Ku Klux Klan is not a Christian organization. Shaking my head, LOL. Quinn, you are absolutely, without a doubt, wrong, completely wrong. I am telling you from the standpoint of a person who is doing research, writing about it, speaking to on a daily basis with professors who have PhDs in this area. I myself working on a master's and soon to be PhD in this very area. I am telling you what I know. I am in the process of doing a media analysis of the what is that movie from 1915? Crap, I slipped my mind.
Birth of a Nation.
Birth of a Nation. I'm doing a complete breakdown of that movie and the book Klansman, which the movie came from. I am telling you that you are 100% absolutely wrong. It's in their bylaws that you have to be a Christian. Now you might not be happy with the way they conduct themselves, but like I tell other Christians, just because someone sins differently than you do, it don't give you the authority to say that they're not a Christian. Because how you sin is not what it takes. That's not a definition of what's called to be a Christian. I was a Christian for 40 years, so I understand what I'm talking about and what I'm telling you. Because they may sin differently than you sin, does not give you cause to say that they are not Christian. So they are without a doubt a Christian organization. Secondly, the problem is both racist white people and the way we practice Christianity, and also what's in the Bible, how it was written. And if you believe in this God, the other part of the issue is what this God of yours did not or has not done. And so to get to your question, Brother Eli, about the Hebrew Israelites, I've had debates on with Hebrew Israelites on the street because I just love it. My wife have to come pull me back. What the Hebrew Israelites have done is they've said, okay, this story, the Bible is about us melanated people, but they base it on something that is completely fictional, which is indirectly the Exodus story. Because you got to follow the Exodus story and go along, and then so forth and so on, right? My question to them is always, where is your? Are archaeological evidence of what you are claiming. Here's what we do know. We do know that the people who are currently calling themselves Jews, at least most of them, are not the original Jews. We know that. We know that they are European Jews. There are
Facts.
two major groups, and we know that they are European Jews. We do understand that.
The
Uh,
Ashkenazi and the
now-
Sephardics, I
yeah,
believe.
and so and we do know that the original Jews came from northeast Africa, if you would. That's what we call it. Um, and so my question is always, where's your proof that you are descendants of the Jews, right? Secondly, um, the Bible to me is like any other scriptural writing for any other religion. Because you think you can find yourself in it doesn't make it any more truer, doesn't make it any more factual, right? So that's how I look at it. They come out the Bible, they say certain things, but we also have to be careful because it becomes a thing of um, let's hate them because they're white, for a whole lot of people, and then it becomes let's hate you, mean people of color, because you don't agree with them. And so everyone has their style, everyone has what their belief systems are, and so it's fine. I don't dislike them. We obviously disagree on their beliefs, and like I tell anybody else, same thing I've told the people on this thing, Quinn and Carl, on this thread. Show me the proof. You can read past scriptures in the Bible and then make subjective jumps and leaps, because that's what the Hebrew Israelites do mostly. They read stuff in the Bible and say, "Oh, so this must be us." So what that's called confirmation bias. You begin with a premise of something that you already
Mhm.
believe, and you look for evidence in which you can
To
interpretate
support it.
to
Yeah.
support what you already believe. That's not evidence. That's not doing research, and that's not evidence. I see Neo is on. I always got to shout out Neo X.
Yeah, yeah,
That's my
yeah.
girl.
Thanks for tuning in, Neo. You know you're welcome to the thread because we are getting into the 8:30 moment. And those who are approved, if you want to come on, you can come on. Neo knows she has that in. Before we do that, Carl, I'm Carl is saying, what is Carl saying?
Carl said, I know Willie perceives his
Oh.
own brilliance, but his logic is extremely limited. Christianity is not a monolithic religion. Many Christians have very different beliefs. Brother, first of all, you don't know the definition of monolithic from the standpoint of religion. When we talk about monolithic in religion, we're talking about the belief in one God or many gods. Your use of the word is incorrect. I know Christians have many different beliefs, but most Christians, the Christians that I know, believe in one God. That's the very definition of Christianity. So your usage of the word is incorrect. Now, to your larger point, I agree with you that many Christians have different beliefs. So we don't have a disagreement there. So I don't understand the point that you're making. If it's to, it could be to say that I'm not as brilliant as you think that I think that I am. I've never said I was brilliant. I am. What I'm telling you is from years and years and years of research, applied research. Like I told another person I had a discussion with. Everything that I say and that I make comments about, I've put in a book. This book here, and it's a public book. So anybody who disagree with me, they can buy the book and they can challenge me on it. Now, if you have your own opinions about stuff, then put it in a book. What I've learned from school is that if you're going to be taken seriously, then you need to have your information published after you do the research and then have it scrutinized by other experts. That's why I have a book out there.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm hoping to get mine out after a while. I'm gonna ask you this question, and this will probably be the last one for me, and we winding down. On page 124, you say this, and I just want you to elaborate, have your way with it. You said that Christianity is ingrained in the very fabric of what it means to be black in the southern United States. What did you mean by that?
I meant that since we've been here, us, our ancestors, we've been here, especially in the South, Christianity has been synonymous with blackness for many of us, for most of us. You up until recently, it has been very difficult to find a black person who will admit that he or she is not a Christian, because in some areas of our community, we believe that not being Christian is akin to not being black. And so it's been ingrained in us that we must all be Christians, or at a very minimum, we must all believe in this Abrahamic God. And I'm telling you information based on not what I heard, but what I know. Since I've been public since 2015 about my denunciation of Christianity, I've literally had people who see me on social media make comments against the things that I said, but then have turned around in the same breath and DM me and said, "Brother, uh, I've been thinking the same way for years, but I can't come out and say it because I am afraid that I might be ostracized by my family. I might lose business. I might lose customers. I might lose my relationship." I know people personally who have told me that and continue to tell me that. And so again, it is part of our DNA as Southerners, especially black Southerners and black people in general, but especially here because this is, after all, this is the so-called Bible Belt.
And I put that up on the screen for you to see that. But I want to say this before you answer it too, Mo. I want to say, number one, the book is not a hard read, but it's a very informative read. And you literally, I don't know what your schedule is like, but you can literally get through this book in a week. You can get through it in 5 days. It's really not bad, but at the same time, it is definitely worth purchasing. The font is not hard to look at. I'm just going off of looking at the book, and that was one reason why I wanted the book. Just so let me say this to all of y'all: Mr. Cartwright could have been on the show long before now. He had told me he was going to come on, but I wanted to do him the respect of reading the book before I brought him on, and it really was not hard. I was just busy with some other stuff, but the book is not a hard read. With that said, you can go ahead and answer the question on the screen.
Yeah, Mo, I purposely wrote the book the way I did because I wanted it to be an easy read. I have a short attention span. I've read a lot of books, but it's taken me a lot longer than some people. But I wanted it to be a quick read, an easy read, and an enjoyable read, and an informative read. So I wrote it. Trust me, it is everything that Brother Eli said and I said. It is not a difficult read at all. Unfortunately, it is not in audiobook. I mean, audiobook version. I got about 100 books in my Audible, so I understand when I'm working out or when I'm walking or whatever. I am listening to a book, so I do. Trust me, I feel you on that. And again, that was what, because I thought about it. I said, man, I love Audible so much, but I like having the physical book. So I said, I gotta make it an easier read, so that people are not asking for it to be on Audible. But it is a much easier read. So yeah. So I'm ready, man. We can take questions. Carl,
Okay.
go ahead. We can take questions.
Let me look at what a friend of mine, Jarvis, said here, and what comes to your mind. Because now we just literally picking your brain and getting your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
He said Jarvis does live in Alabama. He says the South is considered the Bible Belt, and then he talks about post-traumatic slave syndrome. What do you make of that, Mr. Cartwright?
Well, it's like I said earlier. We as a collective people are sick and we don't know it. Subconsciously, we do have post traumatic slave syndrome. But what we try to take out of that post traumatic slave syndrome is the Christianity. We 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 understand the connection and the relationship between slavery and what it's done to us. But we want to hold on and we want to love the Christianity part of it. The Christianity part was just as detrimental and just as responsible for a lot of the things that happen to us as anything else that's part of that whole slavery system. And so if you can't take part of it and say, well, we're going to keep the Christian part and everything else we need to get help for. We need to get help for the Christian part too, because the Christian part is the rails that everything else traveled on. Everything began and started going all the way back to when even before the Portuguese started enslaving our people in Africa, the Arabs used religion because they were actually first to enslave our people in Africa, and then the Portuguese from Europe came over, but they began with missionaries. They started with missionaries, and that's how it started. So don't ever disconnect the faith, the religion, our belief system away from slavery and what it's done to us.
Mm, mm. And my question is going to be as we prepare to wind down. We talked the other day, and I told you this may come up. I haven't seen it come up in the chat, but I'm going to bring it up. When it comes to Black people and the word atheist, okay, because that's a very taboo thing, and people just being transparent. I have said before, I'm not there with atheism, but at the same time I find that the arguments make sense. I side with the atheists on many things. um I consider myself probably more of an agnostic. I think everybody may have some beliefs that they may not have, or may have some hypothesis or whatever. I have some, but I want to get your take on why is being Black and being an atheist or an agnostic such a taboo thing in our society here in America, being Black people, melanated people. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's and this is from research and stuff I read through people who've done this research, who've actually done research on this. It's not a lot, because we're not that vocal and out about our disbelief. And so you don't find a lot of research that's been done on it. And again, that's one of the areas that I'm doing my work in. But there's some belief by experts that a lot of people in our community associate atheism with uh, anti-black or being or not being Black. That's one of them. We've always viewed atheist or atheism as a really bad word in our community. And even me, when people ask me to explain my beliefs or non-beliefs, I always explain it like this. First of all, I don't like labels, but then part of that could be because maybe I just have a aversion to the word atheist or atheism. But when people call me one, I don't get upset or angry about it at all. But I explain my beliefs like this. I said, I don't believe in any of the current deities or gods that we've created as human beings, to include the Abrahamic God. However, I do leave open the possibilities that there is something beyond me that I just don't know of. And that's how I define it. And you can put it in whatever box you want to put it in. You can call it whatever you want to call it. I know really devout Christians who, to them, that's an atheist. I know devout Christians who, if you believe in another faith that's not Christianity, they still call you an atheist. If you're a Buddhist or a Hindu, they'll call you an atheist. And then I know people who are more liberal, who have more of an understanding of religion, worldwide religion, and they just say, "Well, you believe in something different than I believe in." But that's really my uh, that is really my definition of it. What's it? Sandra said, "Well, what is?"
Yeah, Sandra, before you
I
answer,
love this question.
Sandra is actually here in Jacksonville. She is a member of the church I left coming out of Christianity, a church that I started here, and she is very inquisitive. So when she's asking the question, she is truly seeking some answers. She is very Sandra, I want to say this to you since you're listening. The many years that we were together in the church, I greatly appreciated when I would finish a class and you were one of the only ones that had questions. Don't ever stop asking questions. Keep doing that. So with that said, Willie, you got it.
So Sandra asked, "Well, what is our purpose for being here?" And I'm glad that you explained that, Brother Eli, before I answer this question. So, to me, our purpose is anything that you want your purpose to be. First of all, let's make this correction. Uh, we don't have to all have a purpose. I mean, that's just something that people throw out there and believe. Again, one of the reasons why I do what I do is because I want my people to be more analytical in the way they think about things. But first of all, we don't have to have a purpose. But let's just say that we do. Our purpose can be anything from Brother Eli mentioned about his kids earlier. Your purpose can be to create a better life for your kids. My personal purpose is to make sure or to try to make sure that anyone who comes in contact with me, that their life is somehow made better, whether it's the fact that they was around me and started to question things in their life, or something as simple as I made them laugh and they felt better that day. So your purpose could be anything for being here. Your purpose could be because you want to explore the world. Your purpose could be because you want to raise your kids. Your purpose could be that you're a nurse or you're a doctor or you're a garbage man or whatever. You're making life better for someone else, or you're making life better for yourself, or you're just here to gather information and to experience this thing that that we call life. We don't need a belief system or a belief in a deity in order to have a purpose.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate that. I wanted to put this up. Beautiful Lord says, no questions. Great book. Thank you for your time. My mom, being nosy, spotted the book and picked it up and started reading. People will automatically be intrigued. It's a good, smooth read. It absolutely is. And the cover is gonna catch your attention. Once you see that X'd out or that circle with the stripe going through it over the cross, it's like, wait, what is that? Some people shy away from it, but others will definitely be intrigued by it.
Yeah, you.
Um,
First of all, let me say I gotta say thank you to her. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Your comments about people will run away from it. So I have a group of. I'm in a fraternity, and I have some fraternity brothers. And when the book came out, I remember I'm in this text group with some of my chapter brothers from school we went to 30 years ago, or whatever. We talk about everything from politics to religion. And one of the brothers said, "You know what? I might not believe or I might not be where you are, but I'm going to buy the book because it's you and I'm going to support you." And that's appreciated. I had another brother who I'm actually closer to, one of my line brothers, who said, "I can't buy the book because I just can't have the book in my house." And so they got into a discussion. One brother saying, "Well, I'm just going to buy it because it's him and I'm supporting him. And one of these days I might get around to read it." Well, another brother, like you just said, Brother Eli, some people's like, "Well, they're not going to touch the book at all." And here's what's unique about him in this situation. He always challenges his devout mother about what she believes, and they have these discussions. But yet he's afraid to bring a book that does exactly the exact same thing, because all my book is about questioning the things that we've been taught so much about religion, and particularly Christianity. It talks about my transition from Christianity, but then it talks about some of the things, some of the questions that we have, and creating a space where we should be comfortable to have these conversations. And don't look at me like I got three heads because I don't believe the way you believe anymore. Nothing has changed about me. If you've been knowing me for 30, 40 years or whatever, nothing has changed about me when I left the faith, other than I just don't worship or believe the way you believe. Everything else is the same. Everything else is the same.
Hey, I'm the same person, bro. I get the same thing because it's like now it's so awkward when I go around people. I used to be their preacher. I
Yep.
go around them and they looking at me like, mm, like, that type of thing. But I
Yeah.
will say at the congregation that I established here, people are very, when they see me, they embrace me. They appreciated my teaching while I was in. Um, and I'm still doing it. People ask me even not, bro, if you not with Christianity, just leave it alone. Just leave it alone. I'm like, wait a minute. I invested 20 years of my life. I went to school for this, and that's all I knew for the past 20 years. Now I'm just supposed to drop it. Yeah, I'm out here working, but I have a passion to impart truth to people. And that's what I feel like I'm doing. That's why that's scrolling at the bottom of the screen. When I say truth is my only religion, I really mean that's the only thing I'm bound by, is whatever the truth is. So that being said, you know, we in the last 15 minutes. Willie, I thank you, but you can tell, what would you tell us, man? You know, like, if you how do I say this? If this was it, I don't want to get all sentimental and everything, but if this was it, if you're talking and this is you know, your last broadcast, tell your people what you want them to know, or what you would want them to hear from you. If you can package that, and you take as much time as you need.
So I would say that I need people like Carl and Quentin, because this is about creating a dialogue. Um, I would never say that I'm right and that someone else is wrong. I would say that we all believe what we believe. And here's something that I don't have a problem admitting. At the end of the day, none of us really know, right? Because as far as I know, no one has really died and came back and said, this is what's going on, to the point where I want to believe them. So people like Quinn and Carl, we need people like that, because I want to create dialogue. Secondly, when people ask me why I'm doing this, because there's a lot of Christians who say, well, if you don't believe, kind of like what you said, Brother Eli, if you don't believe, then just go ahead and leave it alone. And I told people, my purpose is to, number one, create a space to where we can have these conversations, because there are many of us, especially the younger ones of us, who are starting to question more and starting to leave the faith. Secondly, the way we practice Christianity, have been practicing Christianity, has been detrimental. Look at how we treat people in our communities who we presume are gay or lesbian. Look at how we treat people who don't believe the way we believe. Christianity is responsible for issues in our community. You have people who bomb abortion clinics. You got people who don't want us to do certain science research because they don't believe in stem cell research. We have Christianity has been responsible for creating low self-esteem in women, the whole purity culture, all that kind of stuff. Christianity is responsible for misogyny in women, mistreatment of women. Christianity in the Bible talks about rape and killing of infants and the whole 9 yards. So the way we've applied Christianity, the way we've done Christianity, has been harmful since the very beginning. If you go all the way back to the Crusades and the Salem witch hunts and everything that we've experienced, Christianity was used as a tool to enslave our people. So what I'm doing is creating a space to where we can talk about these things, address these things. And for those people who don't believe anymore, or who never believed, or who have a second doubts, or who have questions, there's a space for you to come and for us to have these conversations, and don't get ostracized, because it's coming. It is coming. We are quickly becoming a more secular society. For the first time ever, stats will show that people going to church has dipped below 50% in this country for the first time ever. You know, it was only 50, 60, 70 years ago when that number was over 80%, in some cases even 90%. We have dipped under 50%. Those individuals 40 and under, who we call nuns, NONES, those are people who are not affiliated with church, and in some cases they're atheists or agnostic. That number is 30%. 30% of people under 40 don't go to church, and a lot of those people are no longer believers. And as the generations, as we're replaced, us being older people are replaced by younger people in the generation, that number is going to continue to increase. I see. Is that a question?
Well, I put that up because I can relate. I wouldn't necessarily call myself and it may, you know, his own circumstance. I wouldn't say I'm a better person. For me, I'm the same person. I would say I'm a more genuine person. And what I mean by that is I don't try to be something I'm not, or I'm not trying to be I don't know, sinless, I guess, in front of people, or because I'm not a pastor anymore. I find myself to be more genuine with who I am. And quite frankly, it's like I feel so free now that I'm from like when I tell you I can be unapologetically Eli Taylor 100%. I can just be me. I love it. And that other part about financial, yes, I wasn't banking and making this big money. I wasn't one of these big pastors, but I can say I'm taking more control and understanding of my finances and things of that nature. And I would agree that my life has become much better coming out of religion. And this is from the pastor perspective. It's better for me now than it was and when I was in. And I don't know, Willie, you may want to share something with that.
Yeah, I don't like you. I won't say I'm a better person, and then maybe I can say that because I do feel like I'm more open, I'm more accepting of other people and what they believe and how they practice their life because it doesn't affect me at all. As long as you're not harming me or harming other people, then you should have the ability to live the life that you want to live. I'm not judgmental of people based on what I perceive as a sin or something that's against the Bible. I probably know more about the Bible now. Well, ain't no problem. I know way more about the Bible now in Christianity than I did when I was a Christian, because this is what I do, and I have these discussions very often. And so, because I do know more, there is no way to put the toothpaste back in the canister because I just know way too much. And so, when I hear things, I know that those things are not true and don't make a whole lot of sense. I want to address Carson Willie when you incorrectly speak on monolithic, where we are, because I've lost my space. Speak on monolithic versus monotheism definition. It tells me that you can't see beyond your own thoughts. Christianity is not a monolithic religion, many different perspectives of what God is. First of all, when we spoke earlier, I was speaking about the context in which we were talking in. Secondly, Christianity, the Abrahamic God, there is one Abrahamic God, there is one Bible and one scripture. When I hear you or anyone else says there's many perspectives on what God is, I think maybe it's time that you, because it sounds like that you are starting to maybe wake up a little bit, and you're starting to maybe accept other explanations of what God may be. Either A, because you are genuine, because you are being genuine in your um, questioning of what you believe, or you're doing it in an attempt to remain um, uh, 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 remain in a position that is accepting of it. So there is only one way that Christians practice Christianity according to the Bible and the Abrahamic God. When you start saying there's different perspective of what God is, now you're outside of the realm of Christianity. Because what do you mean by other perspectives of what God is? Are you saying that God is not the Abrahamic God, that maybe God is a God of love, or He is Allah, or of some other religion? I don't really understand that. What you mean by that? So maybe you can clarify yourself. But as far as I know, and the way I was taught Christianity and the Abrahamic God, there is one God. Now, Muslims, Islam, which is part of the Abrahamic faith, they call their God Allah, but it's still the same thing. They just have a different name for it. Um, Christianity came about because of Jesus' belief in Jesus Christ as the Savior. Jewish people don't believe that Jesus is the Messiah unless you are a Messianic Jew, and they're not the majority of people. But generally speaking, what we understand to be Christianity, there is one God to that Christianity. Now, there are different practices of the processes, but there is only one deity that they believe in, and that's
Okay.
that's the context that I was coming from.
Okay. And I appreciate you addressing that. I didn't see until it was kind of late. And Carl, and maybe we'll do something in the future. Y'all know that the thread that will be on Facebook for this, that will continue. Y'all can continue to type in your chats and things. It's a public. I don't take anything down off of my Facebook, whether I made a mistake or not. I pretty much leave it up there so y'all can see it. And I just want to say thank you to Mr. Willie Cartwright, the author from Sane. I'm gonna put I'm just gonna share the screen one more time so y'all can see where the book is, and we also have put it in the description. If you are wondering where you can get the book, check out the description. If you don't have the description, look at my screen right now. This is the one where you can connect and get the book that I have that we've been talking about and get deeper into some of these perspective that Mr. Cartwright has shared with us. And let's stay tuned. So, because I'm going to ask you, Willie, to tell us what's in development and what's coming just before we get out of here. We've got about 4 minutes left before 9, and I want the people to know what you're about and what you're doing. So, y'all just stay tuned. What you got for us, Willie? What's coming up in the future?
Yeah, absolutely, y'all. Brother Eli said the chat will continue. Put your comments in the chat, questions. I try to answer everything. I try to answer everybody. By no means do I think I'm right about everything. And I welcome any challenges or questions or concerns, because again, I really believe that this is to make all of us better. So I appreciate all the comments, Carl. Yes, thanks, Willie, for sharing your perspective. But like I said, your understanding of Christianity is extremely limited to the baby version you learned as a child. I'm sorry, Brother Eli.
No, you go ahead. I'm gonna tell you about him in a minute.
Okay, you made a comment a little while earlier, and so here's what I need. This is when I need you to apply your analytical thinking. You made a comment. You said, "I always question what I believe, sir, just like you. Bible reflects words that must be interpreted. Every Christian will interpret Bible differently. If you think about those comments analytically, that in itself should tell you that there is a problem in your belief system. If everyone can interpret the so-called words of God differently, then there's a problem. So again, think about what you just said. So we all are out here able to interpret and act any kind of way we want to because of our interpretation. So how can you tell one person that they interpreted what they interpret wrong and that you're right? Who's right? Who's right in their interpretation? And everyone is able to interpret it differently. What that's an excuse when someone comes to you and say, listen, this is not what this means, or this means something completely different, or here's what it really means literally. And so you have to create a defense for it because you've always believed it to mean one way. That's a problem with the Bible. And the fact that there are so many different ways that the Bible has been interpreted. And I'm going to say this, and then I'll get to the very end. Something really basic. How many Genesis stories are there in the Bible? How many creation stories are there in the Bible? There's more than one creation story in the Bible. That's the very beginning. Do you know how many discrepancies are in the Bible? Do you know how many? That's the very beginning. You guys can't even get the creation story correct. Christians can't even get the creation story correct if you read the Bible, because there are multiple creation stories in the Bible. But anyway, back to what you were saying. Yeah, I have a podcast. My podcast is we try to have it every other Thursday at 6:00, but because of school or whatever, I sometimes move it around. But I always post. So you can go to YouTube and save the Sane and become a subscriber, and you'll get the notices about the podcast. And we discuss these type issues. I don't go 2 hours like Brother Eli. I try to limit it to an hour and maybe 15 minutes, but that's fine. We good. I love talking about this. Other than that, I'm in school. I am right now working on some research to do some publishing with one of my professors about non-belief in the Black community. Hopefully, we'll get that published and present that at the religious conference in this huge religious conference in November. Outside of that, I'm working on a thesis, and we'll be applying for a PhD program pretty soon. Probably next fall, because it'll be my second year in grad school. So other than that, we're doing good. I will write a book soon. Another book soon, which is, I'm looking at the comments, Willie's YouTube channel. Yeah, from Save to Sane. Somebody's put it on there. Appreciate it. Oh, brother Eli,
Yeah, I
you
was
on
trying to
point,
look
man. You
for
on
it, man.
point.
I'm trying, man. I'm
I
trying to
appreciate
run
it.
this
You're on
thing.
point. Yeah, do that. If you want to laugh, you can follow me on Facebook. It's WC O'Neal, WC and then ONEAL. The reason why I suggest that, because every Sunday I post something and I call it Good Morning Saints. Those of you who are believers, you're going to say that is attacking Christianity. But what I do, I post something that I hope make Christians think. I post something that they can take to church and present that to their pastor or their Sunday school teacher and say, oh, this crazy guy on Facebook said this. What do you think about this? And so that's why I do that. I do that. I do TikTok as well, and I haven't been that active on TikTok. I'm just so busy with stuff. But I appreciate this. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Brother Eli. Thank you for all of the comments. Again, remember, we are one community with a lot of different opinions and viewpoints. We should have space for all of it. You shouldn't look at me any different if I don't believe the way you believe from a standpoint of religion. And I don't look at you any different because you're a Christian, because I've been there, done that, and I understand it. And so let's continue with this dialogue. And at the end of the day, none of us will ever really know who was right or wrong, because when we die, even if I'm wrong, I won't know it. Or you guys I know, because I end up in hell. But whatever. And maybe the next time I come on, we'll do this thing on the biblical heaven and hell, and I can let you guys know where the origins of the biblical heaven and hell are from, so we can do that.
And you have an open invitation next week. This week you can come on anytime, but next week we're gonna go deep into this thing about prayer. The artist that did the song that I play at the beginning and the end of the show, he's real big on talking about prayer and everything, Chief Collie. So I'm trying, just so y'all know, the viewers know, I'm trying to bring Chief on here so we can really get in it, and Chief gets real he be on their head about this prayer thing, man, and whether or not it works. So we're going to be talking about that. I'm gonna continue this week about
That'll be
whether or not
interesting.
it has worked. Oh yeah, and we want to talk about women, how this Christianity thing has subjugated women. But yeah, I'm anxious to get to this prayer thing, because that's the first thing come out of our mouth. We gotta pray about it.
I did a whole podcast on prayer, and what I would say, just my little 2 cents, is again, I'm about research and evidence. There's a foundation called the Templeton Foundation. I don't know if you ever heard of the Templeton Foundation.
Yeah. The research.
Yeah, and they are actually a conservative, religious-based organization, and so they've done well-known studies on prayer, and they've come to the conclusion, based on the research and the stats, is that prayer does not work. I mean, I'm spoiling it for you guys, but the research is out there. Templeton Foundation, which is a right-leaning, conservative, religious-leaning organization, who would have certainly benefited if the results had been some differently. They have the most popular and well-known studies. They've done the most studies. They've done the most wide-ranging studies on prayer. So if you want to research Templeton Foundation and the prayer studies out there. So absolutely.
Well, Mr. Cartwright, I just want to thank you so much for agreeing to first of all come on the show.
Thank you, Jackie. Jackie getting the book. I'm sorry, Jackie getting the book. I had to say thank you. Appreciate it, Jackie.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And like I said, you have an open invitation. We're gonna be here Monday, Tuesday, and Thursdays. Y'all know we do this at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Our main topic for next week is going to be prayer. And with that being said, I'm wishing everybody peace and love. And I'm going to go ahead and close us out with our boy, Chief Collie. Thank you, man.
Thank you so much.
Reflections in.
Appreciate it.
God in anything I'm reflected in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflected in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflected in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything. Some people open up their eyes to see the world they know outside. I can close my eyes and see all that and way beyond. When these trials of life come heavy and these obstacles get hard, feeling like I need some answers, I just go and talk to God. I just go and talk to God when I'm looking for guidance. Need more than sight, need vision, need direction when I'm blinded. Then I start that conversation with that voice I hear inside me. And that conversation starts with a voice inside that sounds just like me when I talk to God. You can see God in anything, your reflection. I can find God in anything. When I talk to God, you can see God in anything. When I talk to God, I find God in anything. When I talk to God. My daddy said don't never assume, ask questions. It's ironic it was that advice that helped the song happen. It was also that advice that led me to my life's blessings. That same advice helped me make it through life's lessons. It was that advice that separates grown-ups away from children. That advice can be the difference from knowing or just believing. It was that advice that brought the gavel down on my decision of breaking the mental chains of these man-created religions. Cause faith and belief, nonsense, the biggest scam ever. I hate to say it, I swear it's one hell of a mental illness. Why we do it with these religions? The fact that COVID's killing while all of these guys is missing. Peekaboos, guys playing games with you. I'ma just assume he ain't got no COVID miracles. Maybe he ran out after making the donkey talk on some stories about a guy walking on water tides. Simply a distraction to keep you away from you and to look outside for a God when the God is inside of you. When you close your eyes at night and pray to that voice you talking to. When you ready to face the truth, you realize that voice is you. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in.